Last night, people became aware of a video posted by a man who had claimed to have taken the life of his father, who was a federal agent. He goes on to give this massive rant about the problems with the federal government, calling on people to take action. And it took YouTube 6 hours to take the video down. This is a tough story, but it has a lot to do with the upcoming problems we're going to see this year. So I think it needs to be addressed. The first thing, and first and foremost, y'all need to avoid anybody calling for violence. You need to tell people no. And we're going to break this down because I genuinely believe while there are many crazy people who are calling for violence and want violence, that's how the left wins. I believe that the win condition for the left is starting a civil war or some kind of civil conflict with the United States. It may not be a full-scale war, but the fighting is a win condition. Some would say that if a national divorce were to happen or a civil war were to start, could the left win? Wrong question. The win condition is it does start. Because once the conflict begins, this will give the federal government carte blanche to suspend the Constitution, habeas corpus, etc., as we saw in the Civil War in 1861. Regular people will scatter. They'll break organizational ties. They'll say, do whatever. Not everyone. The point is there will be fighting. But this means in places like California, New York, Illinois, etc., all of a sudden you will find these places under unilateral autocratic control by their executives and mostly the federal government. They'll say things like, we have a state of emergency. Thus, we can, under the law, suspend these certain inalienable rights. Funny, they're called inalienable, right? So when this story comes out, and this man, who's clearly insane, in this crazy video makes these comments, I think it's important to, one, let's tell the story about what happened. I know, understand, guys, YouTube will absolutely suppress this. It took him 6 hours to get his video down. They are going to suppress this. I don't even know if this video will remain up, but the message must be expressed as we look at what's going on with the Texas border, the fighting in this country, and the message from this guy. You must resist all efforts to invoke violence or civil war. These things are how we lose. How do we win? En masse, calmly, peacefully, with smiles on their faces. The voters go out in November and overwhelmingly vote for Donald Trump to such a degree, cheating will not matter. Screams and chaos and fighting and violence will not matter. And Donald Trump becomes president. And then we can secure our borders and these foreign wars and start working on rebuilding. Now, I'm not saying that will result in guaranteed victory. It may be that the left refuses to acknowledge they've lost in an election and maybe things get crazier after that. But the win condition for us is absolutely not violence. During Donald Trump's administration, there was far left extremism and very little was done to stop them. The Trump administration, as we're told, was worried, or at least the presumption is, that if they were to invoke the Insurrection Act against the Summer of Love, that he'd be called a fascist or Hitler. And he didn't want to do it because he wanted to try to win again. It was a mistake. See, the problem is the right doesn't know how to engage in psychological operations the way the left does. And so right now, it is an uphill battle. It will be hard. It will not be easy. And stories like this, I believe, may be false flags or could just be crazy people. And that's fair. I think the most likely outcome here is this guy's nuts. Obviously, a sane person wouldn't do what he did. But the fear is, how many people are going to go on social media and advocate for violence or escalation? Let me tell you this. I think it is fair to say, you see that video where Ray Epps on January 5th is telling people to go inside the Capitol and everyone starts chanting Fed at him. Now, I don't know if any of these guys are actual feds, but I got absolutely no problem saying that in a sense as a derogatory term, meaning for too long, federal authorities have propped people up. That's why people say Fed. You take a look at the Whitmer kidnapping case. Some of these guys got convicted. Some of them got acquitted because they were entrapped, basically. Federal law enforcement was trying to get them to do these things. We see it all the time. They call it law enforcement. I call it entrapment. Legally, they'll say it's not. But what they do is they go to some crackpot guy with no mission, no plan, no resources. They fan the flames of hatred and extremism and then supply him with the equipment to do something and then arrest them for it. It's crazy because had this guy never met these people, he'd be sitting in an alley somewhere ranting about how the aliens stole his cheese. But they find these crazies and they give them the means and they give them the motive. Here's the most important thing. Not all feds. I know. And I know this because we have fans who work for the federal government. I have actually met with people who had worked in the intelligence agency. Yes, I know. Heavens me. And what was the context of meeting with some of these guys? I was hanging out in New York, and a guy was like, "Oh, hey, man, I'm a big fan." And it's like, "I actually work for, an intelligence agency. It's a private contractor, but they hire us." And he was like, "Listen, inside is the same as outside. A lot of people support Donald Trump. A lot of people are anti-woke, and they're all scared to speak up. And the people running things and have control of the institutions are woke. What do we do?" I'm like, that's a good point. I got asked yesterday, someone or 2 days ago, I think someone was saying that they work at DHS, and like, what do? They quit their job because of what CBP is doing. And I'm like, this is an honest question. When Donald Trump gets elected, we need good people who are going to be working in these agencies to do their job. We just don't want the bad people there. Anyway, long story short, I want to read for you this news story instead of ranting about politics. This is big, and we've got some developments. Daily Mail says, why did it take 6 hours for YouTube to take down deranged Justin Moan's gruesome video where he showed his own father's decapitated head as he railed against federal government in anti-woke rant? This is why a lot of people gained thousands of views in 6 hours. It remained public online. This is why a lot of people are saying PSYOP. It's manipulation. Why? Okay, here's the gist of the story. The guy's crazy. He was calling on militias and people to take action, as it were. And he showed what appeared to be a head, the head of his father. He's been arrested. The breaking news is that we have this one. Police have arrested a man in connection with the video, which remained online for several hours. Why? Why did YouTube keep it up? Listen, YouTube takes swift action. They have AI that could flag this stuff. There's no way. Maybe. I mean, look, never attribute to malice that which can be attributed to incompetence, Hanlon's razor. Or maybe they wanted people to see it. Right now, according to News Nation, Democrats propose a bill to prohibit militia activity. Legislation would place federal prohibition on private militia activity. Congressman says groups used political violence during Capitol riots. Criminal penalties would increase based on severity of activity. So you mean to tell me, at a time when Democrats are trying to ban private militias, some guy goes online and calls for militia activity and attacks on the federal government and other psychotic nonsense? It reeks of a false flag, doesn't it? I don't know that it does. No, I mean, I got to be honest. The reality is crazy people do crazy things. There are PSYOPs. That's a fact. We don't know what is. I do think it's funny that the corporate press will attack anyone who speculates as to something potentially being a false flag operation by government actors, private security, or a PSYOP, considering there's quite literally a PSYOPs division in the military. So we know for a fact they do it. So it's not absurd to ask the question, is something a PSYOP? However, I will always default to, this guy who posted this video, he's probably just psychotic. That's really it. Anybody who watches a show like mine or anybody else's, nobody's watching, Steven Crowder or Benny Johnson, Styx, Hex, and Hammer, or Tim Pool, and getting the message that violence works. Because all of us have been like, no way, dude, that's the trick. It really is. You take a look at January 6th. This is what they're invoking. It's kind of brutal that so many people got roped into it. Now, I know a lot of people are saying it wasn't an insurrection, it was unjust, and they're targeting people. Yep. I certainly don't believe it was an insurrection. That's silly. A bunch of angry dudes with Trump flags? Come on. There were, I believe there's like one guy who had a gun. You can see it. There's a photo of it. But for the most part, this is an unarmed group. Many of them, I think all of them probably own guns somewhere. Didn't bring any of them. And what you got was a riot on one side of the building and people bumbling about on the other side. In fact, one guy got a pat on the shoulder by the cops and the cop waved him in. He actually got acquitted for that. But of course, they are going to use every opportunity in every instance. I'll give you an example. The far left tears down a bunch of statues of white men and even and black men, abolitionists, because they want to erase history. What are the criminal charges? Nothing. None. Columbus, Ohio, they removed Columbus. That was one of the funny ones. They tried removing Columbus in Philadelphia, and a bunch of local residents stopped them. The guy who knocked over the satanic statue is being charged with a hate crime. So you see exactly what this is about. Anybody who's telling you to walk into the trap of the leftists and the machine, you're being set up. They need a reason. They need a justification. That's why I say this dude who posted this video, whether he's crazy or disciple or whatever, doesn't matter. We need to reject anybody calling for violence. Let me explain what happens. So here we go. Let me read a little bit about this preventing paramilitary action, and then we'll talk about the narrative they're trying to build. They say 3 years ago, white supremacists affiliated with paramilitary organizations stormed the U.S. Capitol, shattering windows, walls, and the families of 5 U.S. Capitol officers. Ed Markey said in a news release, private paramilitary actors such as the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers pose a serious threat to democracy and the rule of law. We must create new prohibitions on their unauthorized activities that interfere with the exercise of people's constitutional rights. The forces of bigotry, hatred, and violent extremism must be stopped for the sake of our democracy. The First Amendment says otherwise. The Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys are allowed to operate. The Proud Boys are not an armed paramilitary faction. You see the game they're playing. They're trying to ban anyone on the right from forming any kind of organization. And if you do, they will plant a Fed or whatever you want to call it, an informant, and they'll destroy you. The way we win this is by passively, with smiles on our faces, speaking up about what we believe in when we want to. It's making money, having kids, protecting your family, and then voting, convincing everybody to vote. Sit back and do not let them trick you into giving them what they need in order to justify their actions. For the regular people in this country, the reason why I say civil war is their win condition. Why is it that the federal government is getting away with arresting these J6ers in the way they are? Solitary confinement, even for journalists. If you're a journalist, this is a true story. We had Steve Baker on the show a couple days ago. If you're a journalist and you went into the Capitol and you filmed it, and then you said, the insurrectionists, you're fine. That actually happened. A guy filmed on his iPhone and he was just walking around and they said, yeah, he's fine. Why? Because his published story was along with the insurrectionists or whatever. It gave them the narrative they wanted. A guy who worked for a local news station who had a large local news camera who filmed it was criminally charged and given 8 months in prison. His home was raided. You serve the machine and you're good. And everybody knows this. So they are looking for reasons to use government force against you. And so they can't just come and arrest a random person. They can't come and shut down Timcast or whatever because we don't do anything. We just speak. If they were to take actions against people who have done nothing without a pretext, they lose legitimacy in the eyes of the public and that can shatter confidence. They need a shield, a veil, so that the average person says, yeah, but those guys stormed the Capitol. Well, the people who broke in the front door did, and they should go to jail and they should be criminally charged. The problem? Under that guise, they arrest people who are walking around confused. And now, when I say something like the people who walked in confused shouldn't be charged with trespassing because they were never given a warning, you get the Young Turks saying, you mean the people who climbed through broken windows and fought with cops didn't know they weren't allowed in? Are you kidding? That's the manipulation. I think Cenk Uygur knows who butters his bread. That's why these people lie. They need you to slip up. Now, if Donald Trump wins in November, things turn around. Trump will have regained control of federal authority. They'll try to resist, but that once again restores the swing of legitimacy in the favor of Trump. At this point, not worrying about re-election, which I think was a big mistake, I believe Trump will likely make more moves to weed out the corruption. It will be far from perfect, and they may go nuts. I mean, in 2020, we had the Boston Globe story where the Democrats had proposed Western states secede from the Union unless given what they want by the federal government. I mean, it's crazy stuff. What we have to watch out for this year is the false flags. What we have to watch out for this year is any crazy person, not a false flag, like this guy who posted this video, probably just an absolutely crazy person. You need to watch out for them. Say no. Right now, we have this story from Military Times. Texas-bound convoy tries to recruit veterans for border protests. James Lindsay has been shrieking like a banshee. Go home. He said, everyone headed to the border right now needs to go home quietly, peacefully, and immediately. And he says, I'm demoralized how easy it was for them to do it again. Why? He's proposing that what we'll end up getting is another January 6th type event. I agree. Nobody should go anywhere near the Texas border. Leave it to Texas law enforcement to handle through the proper channels and do not interfere with the federal government's actions. And a lot of people are saying, well, but they're human smugglers. Yes. And the way it's handled is Greg Abbott has Texas National Guard there barring CBP from engaging in these actions. We need only wait. If you are on your way to Texas, stay away from the border. What's going to happen is, worst case scenario, a group of American loving patriots go down to the border, stand alongside Texas National Guard because you're just standing around. I mean, they're not interfering. And fight breaks out. Something bad happens. And the blame will be because the media's going to lie, placed on militias or something like that. In fact, it may even be that an illegal immigrant, one of these criminal aliens, fights with one of these militia guys or veterans. Instead of the media showing the illegal alien attacking the veteran, they wait until the veteran defends himself, then they show the video. Imagine that. A veteran defending the border, shooting one of these criminal aliens. What's the media going to say? Refugee murdered by far-right extremist. Stay away because there's no upside. There is no benefit to being there. Greg Abbott's on it. By all means, if you're in Texas, lend your support, whatever you might. But the worst case scenario is, even if 10 right-wing, patriot veterans or whatever show up unarmed with smiles on their faces, it only takes one PSYOP-fed false flag to get the press exactly what they need to create the justification that the states are in insurrection or rebellion and that they're wrong. What happens when you get a viral video and mass confidence? This confidence is always the key. When regular people believe that it is the militias acting violently, you will shift the narrative from the criminal aliens are causing the problem and Biden's facilitating it to giving the media the ability to say far-right extremists are attacking refugees and asylum seekers. And then they're going to run that propaganda far and wide. I'm not saying the propaganda works all the time. I'm not saying it always does. But it grants them a legitimacy to make their moves. And look at George Floyd. Now that we actually have all the information on George Floyd, we know that the whole thing's a farce. George Floyd shouldn't have died. I agree with that. I mean, nobody should. I'm opposed to death penalty. But we know that he was screaming, put me on the ground, put me on the ground. He resisted officers. He was chewing on a speedball. Wow, the narrative sure changed, didn't it? But even conservatives were saying, wow, this looks bad. Even I was saying, like, man, putting his knee on the guy's neck for 9 minutes, what are you thinking? We all were. Ahmaud Arbery is a really great example. The Ahmaud Arbery case is lied about incessantly. And these guys, the McMichaels and the other guy's name is, his last name was Brian, and Brian, they're going to spend the rest of their lives in prison because a man who was suspected of felony burglary fought with one of them over a shotgun and was killed in the scuffle. The police were looking for the guy. They thought he was the guy. The McMichaels made a big mistake. The police told them not to pursue, and they shouldn't have. But this is a guy who doesn't live in their neighborhood. They've had numerous burglaries. The police said, we believe this is the suspect. And someone said, hey, look, there he is. In fact, he's on camera committing burglary. You can watch the video. It's online. I'm surprised when I saw, I was surprised when I saw conservatives saying, see, this proves that we believe in justice, that the McMichaels and Brian went to prison. Brian, the guy who filmed it, never did anything. He saw the McMichaels rushing out and chasing the guy. So he slowly started driving and filming what was going on. And then his lawyer released that information saying, look, this is what happened. So they put him in prison. And can anybody ever say why? There's no real reason. None. Yet you had conservatives cheering for it. That's my point. Conservatives don't play the game the left does. They want to be morally right. So if some right-wing group does something extreme, the right will fall in line in 2 seconds. Because, I mean, fair point. If a guy went down there and murdered somebody, no one's going to be like, that was good. But will it be propaganda? Are they going to give us Alien Floyd, where you get a video of some militia guy kneeling on the back of a criminal alien because the alien robbed somebody or committed some crime, and the guy dies? And then you'll get mass riots again, and then you will get pushes from all the Democrats saying, we need laws to protect refugees and asylees from violent extremists. They'll charge a bunch of people with hate crimes and then create criminal alien protected status. In places like Texas and across the country, where you have people upset that there are criminal aliens in their airports and their schools, they will say, the Asylee Protection Act. Anyone who is seeking asylum in this country will be protected by us. Mark my words. The poor children of war-torn countries, we are supposed to be good Christians. And then anybody in Chicago who has a problem is not committing a hate crime. That's the game they'll play. And Republicans won't resist Democrats when they do it. As we enter 2024 and things are getting absolutely crazy in every possible way, let's go over where we're currently at. A guy posted a video on YouTube claiming that he beheaded his own father and mother, I believe. YouTube left it up for 6 hours. Holy crap. Ben Shapiro is the #1 rapper in the world right now. Holy crap. Taylor Swift is accused of being part of a CIA or government psyop to help the Democrats win. Lord have mercy. It is so crazy already. Damn. The reason why I do this segment, guys, it's going to get crazier. There will be false flags. I'm sorry, it's a reality. It will be. And you don't know who will pull it off. I mean, Antifa might dress up like Trump supporters. Trump supporters might dress up like Antifa, likely the other way around. But and then feds engage in psychological operations, and they have criminal informants all the time. Feds entrap people like we saw in the Whitmer case. You think with the stakes at play this year, you ain't going to see anything crazy? Man, I don't have all the answers for you. I can only tell you this. We are walking through a political minefield this year. And the most important thing you can do is be smart about how you navigate it. Anybody calling for violence, I just say Fed. You know, and not in the literal sense that they're working for the federal government, but they're effectively someone trying to trick you and entrap you because they need to use that. It's how they justify their monopoly on violence. It's how they justify suspending your rights. And people fall in line. So what do? Voter registration. Yeah. Get as many people as you can to vote. Get poll watchers, get lawyers, and get ready. November's going to be wild. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.